That's why I said there's probably a biological construct inside of some of this behavior. Like I may have been born into a family of mental illness, hardwired mental illness people. So, but the other parts of it are environmental. At a certain point, a child will come up with the idea unconsciously that in order for me to get what I want, I'm going to have to start to manipulate my environment to get those things. And it means manipulating the people.
When life's visible and hidden battles make you doubt that peace, love, and full-on living are possible, We Win Within brings the proof. Guests crack open their great stories that may overlap with what each of us carries, sharing raw truths, hard-won discoveries, and triumphs that illuminate the road for us all. I'm Hindi Stegman, daughter of Holocaust survivors, speaker, coach, and fellow journeyer in life, inviting you to listen, look inside, and claim the champion already rising in your heart. So, hi, everybody. I'm Hindi Stegman, and I'm your host for the We Win Within podcast. And today we are really in for an amazing treat. Our guest is Baird. And Brian is going to share something that is so special and so important. And I'm just going to give it over to Brian and let him tell you what he's going to share today. So, Brian, go for it.
Is this a good time to do Hamada, Hamada, Hamada?
I have no idea what that is.
Oh, that comes from the Honeymooners.
Oh, okay.
If you ever watched it, and Ralph Cramden would get himself boxed in a corner, and all of a sudden he would go Hamada, Hamada, Hamada. So,
I don't remember that far back.
Yeah, well, obviously you're way younger than me. So, what were we going to talk about today? We had this thought we would talk about or share with the world, a broad discussion about narcissism. And,
so many people that I am in contact with, that word comes up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was married to a narcissist. He was a narcissist. Now, I'm not sure. Are there more male narcissists than female? Because I get to always hear about the male ones, right?
Yeah. I think in broad terms that can be true. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of dispel the notion of what narcissism commonly is called and what it really, and maybe kind of explain a little bit more about what it really is.
Go for it.
So, first of all, anytime somebody's selfish, that's sometimes immediately equated with narcissism. Like, I want that last piece of cake. Oh, you're a narcissist. Or, I want. It's all about me. And it can be the traits of somebody who's got some on the narcissistic spectrum. If they're very demanding and self-serving and all those other things, it can be a trait. But being selfish can be a form of self-care too. So just because I want that last piece of cake, it might be for my emotional sanity that I get one more piece of that sugary, frosty, whatever that goes down, and that'll make me feel good for the moment, or whatever the case may be, some sort of medication. But narcissism, I can describe it. I think I like to describe it in two ways. Narcissism is the ultimate survival tool, meaning you don't get to thrive as a narcissist. You may have all the money in the world, but that doesn't mean you get to thrive. That's because I'm talking about an emotional stability and happiness and maybe a sense of peace and things like that are very elusive to people who are in the narcissistic spectrum. The second part of that, baked into that survival thing, is I need other people to soothe and validate me. I cannot do it for myself. Now, there are lots of other things.
Sorry, is that why people get hooked. It takes two.
It can be because think about the fact that let's just say I'm on the narcissistic spectrum, and I would like to maybe if you don't give me a minute here, I'd like to kind of relabel narcissism as basically one of the fragile ego conditions. There are multiple fragile ego conditions. They often can overlap, and sometimes they can be, you can be like two or three fragile ego conditions at the same time. For example, I could be a narcissist and a people pleaser because the people pleasing gets me that validation I need, which is part of the narcissistic package.
Brian, does that start when you're a kid?
Yeah.
Or do you grow all of a sudden you grow up and you're a narcissist?
Yeah,
Or
and I think there may even be some biology to it based on some personal things I've had to work with over the years. I have a family member who did not know another family member, yet they are identical in their behavior, their fragility, their rage, their lack of self-soothing. They're identical personalities, as if one was just reborn into the other, even though that, you know, that wouldn't have happened. So, um,
so
because of time,
were you born into a narcissistic family?
yes. I was both parents had different traits. So that's why I say it's really about fragility. So um,
But you were not aware of it, right? Like you don't
the
realize your
people,
mother or your father is a narcissist as a kid.
in fact, if you had told me 20 years ago that I was in the narcissistic spectrum, I would have told you, no, 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 it's you. Because one of the fastest things that people do is this, there's no accountability for somebody who's on the there's little or no accountability for somebody who's on the narcissistic spectrum because what's the most they can't be wrong, they can't be weak, they can't be imperfect, they can't be what pick a shiny object image that you can create for somebody, and you can't take those away. So I spend all of my energy making it so that, hey, Hindi, in this conversation, I hope you see the best in me so you can validate me, so you can soothe me, so you can pump me up with my accolades that I need. Those are the kinds of things that happen inside that kind of fragility. And it's it's such a reactive, swirly type of energy that goes on. There's really little or no time for self-reflection to look back and go, "Oh, I'm behaving like a jerk," or anything. No, that never happens. I can behave like a jerk and make it your fault.
Oh, that's a common thing that I've heard,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, that it's always the other person's fault. And then if you live with someone long enough, you start believing it's your fault too. And that's pretty scary.
Right. Well, and I would argue that the people that on that narcissistic side of the fragile ego spectrum, the people who are in that place, it is a spectrum. Like there are people who are so malignant and so dark and so self-serving and so sociopathic about how they protect themselves in that reactive survival frame that they're in, that they can be very, very harsh on everybody around them. And doesn't mean they don't know how to pour on the charm, because in the beginning they will do things. They know how to put the charm into place to get somebody to like them, or at least think that they like them, or whatever the case may be. But all of that behavior is designed, how do I get what I want? And what do I want the most is I want significance. That's the most important thing. And I'm not able to do it for myself if I'm on the spectrum. It takes a really stroke of luck or some really opportunistic self-reflection or something to kind of go, oh, wait, there's something wrong with me, or there's something about me and I hesitate to use the phrase wrong with me, because we are all probably where we need to be at any given time of our lives for the kinds of lessons and other experiences we're going to have. But let's just say is that you get to a point where in my case, this is going back about 20 or so years ago, I realized I was deeply unhappy that I had been fooling myself into thinking I was happy because I was doing all of these things to make myself get that happiness, which included getting people to see me in the way I wanted to be seen and getting people to praise me the way I wanted to be praised and getting people because I wasn't doing it for myself.
So were
So
you successful at the time, Brian?
what do you, if you measure things in terms of modern trappings of success, dollars and cents, yes, I had multi six-figure income, a beautiful wife, two cars in the, we had more than two cars in the driveway, a big house, 6 acres of land, a driveway that was 1,200 linear feet long. It was, just a big barn slash garage in the back that could hold two dump trucks if you wanted to put something that big in there. So, like materialistically, I had lots of, I guess we'll say access, and we'll also say lots of um, skill sets to achieve those kinds of things. Because remember, by making a certain amount of money, by living in a certain kind of home, by having a certain kind of driveway or garage slash barn, or an X number of cars or whatever, and a beautiful wife, those are all trophies, right? Those are all things that people can go, oh, you have such a nice house. Oh, so you start to get the praise. You start to create the image of what you want, which is part of that survival behavioral that comes from people on the narcissistic spectrum.
So really, what made you have that aha moment? A lot of times they say you have to hit rock bottom before you can, find your way up. Was there a rock bottom? Or,
Mm.
I mean, you didn't just wake up one morning and say, I'm not happy. I think, you know, it is, what was it?
There's more than one thing. Just because when you're in that, remember, it's the ultimate survival tool, right? Being a narcissist is the ultimate survival. Now, listen to the phrase. It's the ultimate survival tool. It is the antithesis, the opposite of thriving. To be in that frame where you're constantly making other people fill your holes, no pun intended. You're trying to, you're trying to get people to give you the praise that you can't give yourself. You're trying to have people give you the confidence you can't give to yourself. You're trying to have people see you in the positive light you can't give for yourself. And it's not necessarily your fault. Like I'm not looking for people to go, oh, I'm a mess and I really, yeah, and you do have to take some ownership to move forward. But the flip side of this thing is even though there may be some biology to this, for the most part, the way our parents are in our journey can determine whether or not we start to do that survival thinking. And then usually you start as a fairly young child. So I evolved into becoming a narcissist, this fragile ego, narcissistic energy, because I had a father who was that way. I had a mother who was that way, and I didn't even know that my mother was that way until recently.
Give me some examples from your childhood.
Oh my gosh, there's first of all, it's not just my childhood. I've seen this over and over and over again. So you get people who are like, if as a parent, you might belittle your child in order for you to feel better about yourself, which is a very weird way of looking at life, that your kid is
Let
just
me
a
let me hear the
trophy.
words. I'd like to hear the
I,
words, Brian.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
But but it wasn't always just the words, Hindi. Like my father had a belt. He loved taking that belt off. And he would go into a rage for little or no reason. And if I was in the room, even if there were others in the room, I was the first target. So there was something about my being his son or his being my father that was part of it. My younger brother didn't get exposed too much to this behavior on his part. It was almost always me. And he would take that belt off and he would weigh the tar out of my butt, my back of my legs. I'd have welts on there and like that kind of stuff. And that, like looking back on it now, I have no emotion attached to it. But there was a time when I did. So, so filling that in, like in terms of how does that make me into a narcissist? I realized that I couldn't depend on anybody else it was, and I don't think it's a very, I'm saying when I realized, unconsciously realized,
Okay.
there was nobody else that's going to take care of me. My mother was caught up in the shadow of my father. My father was caught up in his own demons and shadows. The only person who could take care of me was me. So I learned very early on how to start curating my experience so that I was likable or lovable or praisable or whatever, because I was never being taught to give that to myself by my parents. They weren't equipped to do it for themselves. So I'm going to argue that narcissists will beget narcissists. Now, they will also beget other energies, but it's certainly one of the fastest ways to finding a new member of society who has narcissistic energy is to look at what their parents were like, one or both of their parents, or maybe even the rest of the family. There are actually narcissistic family patterns. So you can see a family that will dunk on somebody who's trying to achieve. They're trying to make something of themselves because the rest of the family isn't very much of an achieving family. But their energy is such that they have to protect themselves from not looking like they're not achieving things or losers or whatever phrase you might want to attribute to somebody who's in a category like this. So in order for me not to feel inadequate, I'm going to dump all over the family member. And so will the rest of my family dump all over the family member who's trying to make something of themselves, because the family pattern is at the survival level of making sure that we can't be seen as weak, we can't be seen as not knowing, we can't be seen as not intelligent or whatever else is going on out there. There are people in
So,
society we can call attention. I'm not going to do it now, but there are people we know in society who behave this way.
so let me ask you something. So if you're the person within that family who's trying to, make a change in your life, you really have to protect yourself from sharing what is truly going on for you in a positive way. Is that what you're saying?
I would ask you to ask that question again. Like,
Okay. So I'm one of four children, my parents
mhm.
and the whole family really are not successful. And I realize that the pattern that I've been living with is something I don't like. And I want to be successful and I want to try this and I want to go out there in the world. But if I go and share that with my family, they're going to pull me back in. And because I don't want to lose their love, I just don't share it.
That's I'm or I listen to what my family's saying and I don't do what I want to do. So so in effect, even though the survival behavior is what drives somebody who's a narcissistic, in effect, they're in a prison. In effect, they're not able to be real. In effect, they are distinct and separate and dissociated from everybody else because they're busy curating their journeys. And what I mean by curation is I'm doing what I can do to make it so you give me the praise that I want, or you give me other validating statements and terms, or you give me the money that I want, or you give me the love that I think I deserve, or whatever the case may be. So I could spend all of my time working with what I know to make these things happen is to turn you into my emotional support animal, so to speak. So there are limits to how this goes. For the most part, everybody who does this thing does it almost in predictable ways. In the beginning of a relationship, it's commonly love bombing. So I meet somebody I like, and then I'm just going to go just drip love all over them. And I mean love in quotes because it's very conditional. So if you need money, I give you money. If you need a car, I give you a car. If you need whatever's in my means. But if I perceive you as a little bit lonely, I will make sure you don't feel lonely. I'll be your constant companion. If I know whatever I have, and it's most of the time it's an unconscious thing I see. And I will look for people, if I'm in that state of needing to be validated by others, I will look for people who will be compliant with that need on my part. So I'm not looking for people who are super confident and a bit. Doesn't mean that that doesn't happen, by the way, because you can even love bomb somebody who's got confidence and wear them down. And there's some stories in my life where Some friends of mine were involved in romance scams and things like that that are born out of the ability to erode people past their confidence and start chipping away at their psyche and things like that, so that you can still turn somebody who's confident into a fragile person. You can break them down. And sometimes, for some people in the narcissistic spectrum, that challenge, unconscious as it may be, is very, very strong. So I meet somebody who's very powerful as a person or woman or a man, depending if I'm which one I am or what my preferences are. And then I go and love bomb those people to make it so that they love me back, or at least quote love me back. So the reason for all of this is that the people who are on the narcissistic spectrum have not been taught how to love themselves, not been taught how to be present with themselves, not be taught to be self-reflective, not be taught to like themselves, not be taught to know their worth, because their parents or family members couldn't do it. So you end up in these patterns of like, how do I get through my life? I've got to figure out how to make myself significant. And most of the time I give other people power over that, but I tell them what I want and make sure that they give that to me.
Oh, Brian, let
And
me ask you something. When you're doing the love bombing, when
mhm,
one is doing the love bombing,
mhm.
are they conscious of what they're doing, or is it almost robotic? It becomes, part of who they are, which is different, I think, than being a people pleaser. Because you can be a people pleaser, right? But you don't then hold back. You just keep pleasing.
Well, just first of all, narcissists are natural people pleasers.
So are all people pleasers narcissists?
Not necessarily. No,
Okay.
but I would say that all people pleasers have some fragility in their story. People pleasing goes back to self-worth. So you can, or low self-esteem or low self-worth and things like that. So you're looking for other people to give you, in the people-pleasing category of a fragile personality. That's how they're getting that's first of all how they're surviving, but that's how they're getting their soothing and sense of self and all those other things. And if you look at it, there's a lot of overlap between somebody who is a people pleaser for the sake of feeling loved and somebody who's a people pleaser for the sake of feeling significant.
Right.
So,
That's a yeah.
so, but nonetheless, most of the time, if I'm the narcissistic side of the spectrum, I'm going to attract a people pleaser.
Which would be someone like me.
Could
There,
be.
once upon a time, I was a major pleaser until I realized what was going on.
Mhm. And so the you can see that there's already a bomb ready to go off in that scenario, right? Because you got two people who are fragile, two people who have needs that they're expecting to get from the other person, and then ultimately, especially the one who's more aggressive and which is usually the narcissistic type energy, they're going to start chipping away at the other person and into a point where they lower even further their self-esteem or confidence, or even for that matter, to take away their grounding. So, because one of the things that's very important, and you've heard the term gaslighting.
Yeah.
So, one of the very important things that happens in a narcissistic energy's life is that they learn fairly early on when they're starting to lose control with somebody, because that control is how I get validated. I need to control you to validate me the way I need to be validated, I need you to love me the way I perceive that I need to be loved. I need you to comply. I need you to see me as powerful, and I need you to see me as strong, and I need you to see me as knowing, and I need you to see me as smart. And as soon as that starts to, if there's any question marks in that process, if there's any slip inside of that experience, I'm at that point going to realize, oop, they're starting to figure me out. It's this very unconscious. But the thing is they're starting to figure me out. So now I have to leave them a little bit of a wonky state, and increasingly wonkier state as time goes by, in order to make sure that they are compliant with my needs. It's a very strange but powerful place for somebody to realize, this is the fragile ego on the other side, that they have been boxed into a prison by the person who needs stuff that they can no longer give them.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and that's, but sometimes that could be even deadly. Like I do believe that a lot of the murders of passion you see, like when somebody murders somebody because they quote cheated on them or weren't interested in the relationship anymore. You hear these stories day in and day out all over the world. And I think that has everything to do with somebody who's so fragile that they can't take the failure and the rejection of somebody else. So they will destroy that other person, including killing them. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not saying everybody who is a narcissist is murderous, not saying
Right.
that at all. But I'm saying I believe a huge number of those crimes of passion that you hear about out there are extensions of narcissistic fragility.
So let me ask you a question. Um, if I have a feeling that um, my spouse, my brother, obviously it's not me. I'm not the narcissist. I'm the people pleaser.
Mhm.
But I see the signs. I have this aha moment. I'm working on myself. I'm in awareness, and I try and I want to bring that awareness to them. You know, the way that you're acting, it's like a narcissist. I think you may be a like, can one help somebody else, or does the narcissistic person have to get it for themselves in order to start to make some shifts?
Okay. So we have a few things that are embedded in your set of questions here that are really important to kind of know about. So one is the first reaction we have to the word narcissism is it's about being selfish. I mean, that's the natural definition that we have. Even though I don't, it's not even, it's only a hint at the full picture of what a narcissist is. Being selfish can be part of it, but it's really not the definition of narcissism by any means. But let's just say that's my take as a person who's experiencing but not knowing that I'm living inside of a narcissistic shell. So somebody comes up to me and goes, "You're a narcissist." And I'm going to quickly calculate, very, very quickly calculate, that means selfish. And I'm going to go, no, no, I'm in a relationship with you. And I know who the real selfish one is. It's you. You're the narcissist. You're always making demands on me that I can't fulfill or whatever it is. And there will be truth in that. One of the reasons why I make my partner, if I'm involved in a relationship with somebody, one of the reasons why I might make them wonky, gaslighting them, is because I don't want them to see the person that unconsciously I believe I'm inadequate. Unconsciously, I believe I'm spiteful or hateful. Unconsciously, I believe I am unworthy. Unconsciously, I believe I'm unlovable. Unconsciously, I believe I probably deserve to be hated. I'm self-loathing. Unconsciously, all these things are taking place because nobody taught me to find my grounding in the center and presence and love and truth, and nobody taught me those things. So you can say by virtue of the fact that I wasn't taught, it's not my fault. But once I realize I'm not happy, I've got to take ownership. Nobody's coming along to reverse the problem. So going back to what you were asking about is can you call somebody a narcissist? I've done it in a kind of a clinical setting where I've explained to them, this is the behavior I see. This is classically what a narcissist looks like. Can you see your behavior in that term, in that definition? And they can look at it and go, yes or no. And if they don't see it, then we either have to work on it further or realize that they're actually probably fairly dark and down on the edge of this, further down on the spectrum and unable to ever recover. There will be people, most people who are in the narcissistic patterns, that will go to their grave a narcissist. Often, if not always, lonely, scared, feeling unloved, probably a shorter life because they don't have the relationships that are grounded and make them happy. or can make them healthy too. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So the other part about it is that how did I discover I was a narcissist? I didn't during my time as one.
You didn't?
Mm-mm. I did a radio show. I had a radio show for 2.5 years, and I decided somebody had mentioned that they wanted to have a more of a discussion about what narcissism was. So fine. I'm very confident talking about it. I've got this kind of training and background that makes it something where I can talk about it. And so I talked about it on my show, and then I think we had 36 minutes of actual airtime. The rest of it's commercials and news and all that stuff. So 36 to 40 minutes of my time was me talking about what narcissism was. And I talked about the charm and the love bombing and all these other things that take place. And then when the show was over, and I pre-recorded my shows at this point, I was no longer doing live guests. I would have guests live record with me, but then I would submit the show for curation to the station. And after I had recorded the show and I'd listened to it that Saturday morning when it was aired, I had a 9 a.m. show on Saturdays. I went, oh, weird. I think I used to do those things. Like the love bombing in particular was the thing that stood out the most. And when I had that realization, it was a pretty big smack because there's no positive way to talk about narcissism and the fragile ego part of the spectrum narcissism represents. I'm not saying that there aren't people who can be kind and compassionate even as narcissists. Again, it's where are you on the spectrum? I believe that I was on the more benign end, but there is a black or dark end. And I believe when the closer you are to that end, you are doomed. I don't think you can be redeemed. So, and there's also some of the challenges are narcissists are smart, with few exceptions. They're smart in a very unconscious way. They learn how to read people and manipulate and manage and the energies around them because they're always scanning for who can give me what I need and want and who do I have to watch out for, who's going to be a problem that I need to get out of the way. Those are all the calculations
Right.
that go along. So, so when you're in that space, you're always calculating all those things. First of all, it's very performative and inauthentic. So it further makes it very challenging for you to take time to look at yourself.
So that must have been something. You're sitting there the next day and you're listening to this and you're having some aha moments
Hmm.
and feeling a little uncomfortable, I would think.
Well, you might say it was uncomfortable. It was going like it was not it was not a pretty thing to see. But on the flip side of it, the fact that I was able to see my past behavior as narcissistic like, if not absolutely narcissistic. I'm going to say I was narcissistic. I gaslit just like all the other people do, but, but it was, I was married for 24 years. I firmly believe if I was on the malignant end of the spectrum, that my ex-wife, my now ex-wife, would either have been dead or divorced me very, very quickly. She's a tough cookie. It would have probably broken her for a bit. She probably would have been angry at the world for a while, whatever all the other things are that would have happened as a result of having to deal with me if I was on the malignant end. But we made it 24 years. The divorce was probably in process for 20 of those 24 years, but it was sort of a gradual thing. But inside of that is that she had her own fragilities. And it's her story to tell, so I'm not going to go into any of the details of her life and all that stuff. But the fact that she had her own fragilities, her own reasons for being fragile, her own, issues that were unique to her. She had some people pleasing energy in her, but that was maybe what brought us together a little bit in the beginning. But the flip side of that is she very quickly stopped being a people pleasing energy with me. So we ended up navigating and negotiating to a new equilibrium where I still got what I needed, and much of the time, unfortunately for her, it was kind of keeping her to the side. Like she never got the full me. And consequently, I could never get the full her because I wasn't letting her one, and two, she had to have her own, she had to kind of keep a little bit to herself. So, but what ended up happening? You asked what earlier. You asked what was it that was a made it so that I realized I was a narcissist. Well, it was not during the 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 throes of being in the narcissistic piles that I discovered this. It was after the fact. But what I did have, as I mentioned before, is this kind of like a discovery that I was not happy. Um, and it took probably decades to get to that point. I just was not happy. To the point where now, when my ex-wife and I were discussing divorce, instead of trying to hold on at all costs, I finally just said, okay, I just threw in the towel because I was tired and unhappy and seeing something had to change. And I didn't know what it was. I had no idea where I was going, what direction I was going to go. I just knew I was unhappy. And by virtue of realizing, having an honest conversation with myself about being unhappy, I started to look for things that would somehow or rather make me happy. I didn't
And
even
what
know
did
what that
that look
was.
like, Brian?
Oh, I don't know. What did the search look like, or what I wanted look like? I don't
Yeah, what did the search look like?
know. I one of the things I did is with my daughter, I dove into martial arts,
Okay.
which is in some ways a spiritual journey. So it teaches you situational awareness, it teaches you inner focus, it teaches you, and when you start to do those things, it gives you a little bit more pause for self-reflection. And you could argue that my discovery that I was unhappy and taking martial arts went hand in hand because they kind of did. The other thing is, as I became a parent, I was a parent at the age of 42, first time, my only child. Became a parent at the age of 42, whereas a lot of people did it in their 20s and 30s. And probably if I had been a parent in my 20s and 30s, my poor daughter, if I had had her then, would have grown up needing therapy couch for the rest of her life. It doesn't mean she doesn't need some support, but the fact is that it would have been a lot worse because I would have been more like my father, very rageful or very distant or dissociated. But with my daughter, there was a flip of a switch of some kind where I realized that I was no longer the center of the universe, that she had an important place in that universe. And so I spent quite a bit of my time looking at the world through her eyes, even seeing myself through her eyes. I think one of the fastest ways to learn about yourself, of course, is to be a parent because you start to see who you are in the child's eyes and you see your impact on that child. So each one of these things, there was no cataclysmic aha epiphanous moment that, that, oh, I got this is the path or anything like that. All I know is that each one of these things, becoming a parent, going through martial arts, um, going back to my entrepreneurial roots, I actually was also using my entrepreneurial roots for a corporate enterprise that I was part of for like nearly a little over a decade, and then being fired from that. And my ego was wrapped up in how successful I was in doing all the things I was doing my whole life. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. So a lot of my ego was caught up in how successful I could be. And here I was fired. So it was a very strange place for me because and it's easy to see how many mistakes they made in firing me. It's easy to see all the things that they had to suffer by doing that. But from my perspective, in the beginning, I had no personal accountability. I was like, I didn't cause this problem. They were looking for cheaper labor. I was an expensive asset, expensive meaning I think I earned my way, but the company was doing everything they could to get squeeze nickels out of every corner they could. So, um, but I was looking at all these things that were happening in that part of my journey and realizing that um, all the trappings of success that I was adhering to before, owning all these companies, then becoming entrepreneurial inside of this other company for over 10 years and all these other things, they weren't making me happy. So the fact that I got fired was just an extension of the fact that I was going, oh, something's wrong, something's got to change. So the change was just thrust on me one way or the other. And initially, I was saying they're losers, they don't know what they did, and it did affect them very dramatically. It did affect them. But the flip side of that is I didn't change anything about myself that led to that firing until I had that conversation after the radio show, going, oh, I'm a narcissist.
Wow, that's amazing that something like that you were able to see it, because most people are not willing to look at themselves naked. You know, they might see I have a pimple, a blemish, a gray hair, but to look at yourself and be able to make a diagnosis, if you want to call it that, or
Yeah.
to have that awareness, Brian, that's really amazing.
Yeah, it well, I look back at it and I go, this is part of my, I have many missions while I'm here, but this is part of my full service mission is to create awakenings for people. And one of the awakenings that I am spending energy on, in fact, I have a brand new client. We don't know. I'm working on this client with another. I have a partner working on the process with me because this particular client is very challenging. They've learned the language and all these other things, so they know how to milk and manipulate their, what they need to do in order to appear like they're being something different than they are. And it's very challenging getting to that point where you say, no, I'm calling you on it right now. Look at what you're doing. So we're having that kind of challenge right now. But the reason why that is an important experience that's going on right now is because I've been working with people who are very, very on the very soft end of this narcissistic spectrum so that they get a chance to become healthier and more wholesome. And it takes a long time. For people who are on the spectrum, it takes a long time. I won't tell you how many years it took for me. But the fact is that usually you are living in that survival frame for decades. And that's the challenge is learning to drop those patterns, learning how to release the behaviors that go with it and all those other things. Finding true confidence in yourself, finding the ability to truly love yourself, finding the ability to truly be happy, the ability to be alone without being lonely. All of these things are very powerful things that can happen for people who are on the narcissistic spectrum, but they've got to become aware first. And my time on this planet includes making those people aware that they were unhappy or they are unhappy like I was. I'm now the happiest I've ever been. But how to be recognizing that your unhappiness is as a result of your own survival frame, your own survival posture, which may or may not include being on the narcissistic spectrum, but you certainly are likely having a fragile ego experience. Learning how to step out of that fragile ego is the next step, but just becoming aware that you have a fragile ego that needs to be taken care of is huge. So,
Brian, I heard you say it takes a long, long time. So I know someone who definitely is on the spectrum.
mhm,
He had an awareness, but he
mhm,
wasn't happy. Something has to change. Spent a lot of money taking different courses, going to all these gurus, and every time he says, oh my God, this is it, and I'm a new person and I'm changed, and oh my, and he believed, I think he believed it,
mhm,
and then very quickly slipped back into old patterns.
uh-huh,
So to help someone, like, what is it? Like I say for myself, we have to be a daily warrior for ourselves. Every day, how am I feeling? Am I feeling up? Am I feeling down or whatever? What can I do to uplift if I'm not feeling? how does that person who is trying and they take 10 steps forward and then go, let's say 8 steps backwards, how do you help them?
Uh, we as third parties have serious limitations on how you, there's like, in my opinion, there's no like intervention or anything like that that you can go, you could sit down with somebody who is suffering from chemical dependency or suffering from alcohol or maybe gambling or sexaholic type of thing, you know, these suffering experiences. Um, it's even challenging for them because they have to be willing to clearly meet that challenge that's going on in their lives with some degree of brutal self-honesty.
How do you get it
And
to stick? How do you get it to stick?
that's why I say it takes time. First of all, you need guidance. Now, I got lucky. I mean, I really did get lucky. I ended up studying hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming. Some of it's NLP, and I've been doing it at an amateur level for years to support my sales skills and things like that. But once I started to look at it not as something to use to serve myself, but something to use to serve humanity, and once I got into this place of realizing that what was going to make me happy was to be in service, not people pleasing, but to be in service, then it accelerated my own change. And I don't, and as I said, it was long after I had climbed out of that hole that I looked like, oh, I was in that hole. I didn't look at it while I was in it. I would never have accepted it or even let alone understood it. But once I was able to look back after that radio show recording and like look at the things I was describing and how it was like, you know, the gaslighting, the love bombing, um, the pursuit of accolades, the requirement that the partner be part of a picture that makes the fragile ego feel good about themselves. Like, so I needed a nice looking bride. I needed good cars. Like, you know, I needed the twin driveway. I needed the big house. If I had a lake, I probably would have had a yacht, you know, like, you know, whatever the case may be, because those were all the things that made me look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm great. I'm significant. I mean something. And that gives me certainty of some kind so I can run around and feel whole in that moment, in that experience, because you just gave me praise or whatever the case may be. If you give me something other than praise, that's something's not going to go right for somebody. That's where the gaslighting will come in. If you have suddenly declare, and if you suddenly have to declare your needs to me, I would go, wait, wait, wait. Before we take care of your needs, my needs first. And it wouldn't even be a conscious part of the conversation. It would be like, um, imagine this kind of a conversation, man and woman. Let's just say I was the man, I was in the relationship, and then they came to me and you go, you know, I need time to think. I need time for myself. My gut reaction is, I'm not in control. With that very statement, I'm not in control. I need to know what they're thinking, what they're going to think about, what's going to happen to me based on what they're thinking. I need to know if there was something I did to make that happen. So I need to know what that is. I need to know now. I can't let them go have time to themselves until we had a chance to talk. It's about taking care of my needs first. And so when you're inside of, and if that person says, no, 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 I need time for myself, I'll go to war. I will gaslight. I will argue. I will say, this isn't right. You know, I'm not, and I might even say, I'm not feeling safe. I'm not feeling secure because I know probably those words will trigger you, my partner in the process, to go, oh, well, maybe I can take care of him first. Or maybe I'll just take care of him. Or maybe he's right. Maybe I'm being selfish and I'll just take care of him or whatever else is going on. So you've got this challenge of being reactive to all these things. You can't be aware. And what ends up happening is the person who's being living in the shadow of a narcissist, they're the first ones to wake up. And you're the first ones to realize how unhappy they are. Now, If they share that information with the person who's on the other side of the discussion, then the gaslighting will continue. If they keep it to themselves, or they just say, I'm out, and they leave, and they find a safe place to go, and they cut off ties and all that other stuff so that they can recover themselves and things like that, the narcissistic energy will go out of their way to try to fix whatever that was, because they can't be seen as a loser, can't be seen as broken, they can't be seen as weak, they can't be seen as not knowing, they can't be seen as not lovable. And if you're trying to break away from me, that means I'm not lovable.
Wow.
So all of this is the ultimate survival tool, and all of the behavior I get to be as a narcissist is not contemplated. Anybody who thinks they're evil planners of everything, yeah, they plan things in the moment. They're very quick calculators about how to get what they want, but it is not an overt conscious behavior. It is baked into a very reactive, survival-based framing that means I just have to get through this moment by making everything around me bend to me so I can feel good about me in this moment.
So this may sound like a silly question after all that you've said, and we could be talking for hours. If I'm with someone, let's say my father, who's being very, very reactive with me over something stupid or what not important, and I don't want to have a confrontation, but I don't want to be the victim because I realize that this is a pattern with him. Are there words to say? Are they best to just walk away?
Are you arguing that your father having a reactive moment was also a narcissist? Is this
Yes.
the example? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, like, because I don't know that everybody who's reacting
No. He's a
is
definite
okay.
narcissist. I
Okay.
know his actions are narcissistic. I've come to terms with it. I'm living there. And a lot of times, I just leave and go to my room. But
Okay.
I don't want to do that necessarily. Are there any tools I can use when somebody's being
One of the
reactive?
things that I've noticed is that the only engagement for a person who's a narcissist who's not self-reflective or aware
Yeah.
is ego stroking, which means you're playing to the curated image that they want to have. You're so smart, you're so brave, you're so strong, you're so capable. We've seen evidence of this in recent news with people in politics. Like it's like in order to kind of where it's like almost like a placation of that person's darker side by giving them the praise they need on for them to feel good about themselves, giving them the semblance of love or whatever else that they need to. It's all superficial and it's all unreal. That what a narcissist is doing to feel whole, it doesn't mean it's truth. That's just what they're doing to get what they need.
So in the situation with the father and son, um, that might quiet it at that moment, but it's not solving really anything, right? I
But so my answer dealing with my father was to estrange myself.
Okay.
I have that with my brother right now because he's a mini me of my father. They didn't know each other. They met, but they didn't really know each other. That's why I said there's probably a biological construct inside of some of this behavior. Like I may have been born into a family of mental illness, hardwired mental illness people. So, but the other parts of it are environmental. At a certain point, a child will come up with the idea unconsciously that in order for me to get what I want, I'm going to have to start to manipulate my environment to get those things. And it means manipulating the people. And then you start the training. You start training your parents, you start training your grandparents, you start training the teachers, you start training your peers. You begin the training. It takes quite a few years, but in the end, and that's why it takes a long time to get out of it being a narcissistic, because it takes a few years to bake it in. Like if you could catch somebody at a young enough age, in my opinion, who has maybe parents on the narcissistic spectrum, or maybe they're even predisposed biologically, as I think may be possible, that you can give them early coping skills so that they aren't rageaholics, so that they aren't trying to fill all their holes with other people's behaviors or whatever, then they're going to be in a much better place. So, look, statistically, narcissists are only about 7% of the population, according to various organizations that are out there, about 7%. I think the number is much higher. But I think the ones who are really malignant, sociopathic, the ones who completely lack compassion for others, that's a very, very small piece of society. The ones who have the ability to show compassion, even though they might not normally exhibit it because they're busy taking care of themselves, I think there's a chance for those people. It's just that however many years it took for them to bake themselves in the oven of narcissism, it may take that long to thaw, to get to resolve being a better and more healthy human being. And there's a chance, Hindi, based on my own observations about my own life and my own patterns, there's a chance that you will always have some of that in you because you did it for so long. Like in my case, 5 decades of living in that survival frame. So every once in a while, something may come up that's based on the old patterns, even though I have worked on them and released them and taken the emotions that were attached to them and released those too, you know, taken trauma and moved that into another more manageable space and container, found my places of healing and looking and developing the contributory nature of who I am today in an authentic way as opposed to a people-pleasing way and all those other, things that are going on in life. Every once in a while, something will come along that may smell like betrayal or abandonment or step on my self-worth or whatever the case may be. And I may just go back to an old style behavior. The good news is I can catch myself.
Wow. So we're a work in progress,
Mhm.
and we're not robots. We're human,
What? When did that happen?
having daily human experiences. And thank God that you were able to have that awareness and you have worked on yourself and you've helped so many people since then. And a lot of times, we ask, why is this happening to me, God? Okay, why me? Why do I have to go through this? Why? And in that why, sometimes the answer is so that you have the tools to help others.
I think that you just described my own journey. Like it was not a pretty childhood. It was not early adult years wasn't a thing. Even my marriage wasn't exactly beautiful or whatever the case may be. But when I add it all up, it's a beautiful life.
Wow.
And until I got to that point though, I would say that I was still over there working
Right.
on this, trying to figure out why I was unhappy.
So, Brian, like I said before, we could go on for forever.
Hmm.
So before we close, is there anything, any pearls of wisdom that you want to leave our We Win Within family with? Because I think it's so important to hear it directly. You know, what you say is through your experience of going through it, through your experience to working through it, and for you from your experience of all the people that you are helping today.
So what are my final words on this?
We're not going for another hour. So,
I know what I'm saying. My final words would be curious and take ownership of your life.
so if you're not happy,
Be curious and take ownership of your life.
okay.
Don't make other people responsible for your stuff. Don't make other people responsible for your happiness. You go and be happy. Forget about even trying to find it. Chasing happiness is, in my opinion, a waste of time. Being happy, that's an easy thing to do. Just do it.
Well, who sings that song? Don't worry, be happy.
Is that Pharrell? I can't remember which one. Is that Pharrell or is that Bobby?
Bob Marley.
No, not Bob Marley.
No,
Anyway, well, don't worry,
that's
be
okay.
happy.
Don't worry, be happy. Okay. On that note, Brian, thank you again so much. And living each day in joy and happiness, and it all starts inside. So another wonderful, wonderful time on We Win Within with our special guest, Brian Baird. Thank you so much, Brian.